freaking first cut. Golly. Welcome in, YouTube. Emergency pod time. 2 new names headed to the LIV Golf League. Hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll jump into breaking news right now. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman. That right there, Kyle Porter and KP. This is becoming a trend. Fire up the siren. Hit the emergency pod button. We're at it again.
Man, I've got a lot of thoughts. I was up late last night just like thinking about this, and I feel like sometimes I feel like you don't get to talk enough, and I want for us to have a conversation more so today because I feel a little crazy for the corner that I'm on right now. I feel like it's been, there's been a lot of like pushback that I didn't see coming over the last couple of days. And so I'm just intrigued just about where you're at with everything. And maybe we can talk about Bryson first and then get to kind of the broader more broadly where you're at, if you want to do that. But I'm just really curious about having like a kind of a good back and forth on this podcast.
Sure. So I also think as we get into this, there has definitely been another layer revealed. I think Phil Mickelson, Bryson DeChambeau, these guys, like it's now more of a mainstream golf story than it is a golf Twitter story, because I've had people text me that are like, what is this golf league that's going on? Like, what is happening right now? So I think we've finally broken through, which is probably creating, a lot more and different takes from people that you're seeing. But here's the news out of this Wednesday morning. The Telegraph on this, that Patrick Reed and Bryson DeChambeau expected to head to the LIV Golf League. I was actually personally able to confirm with 2 of Bryson's sponsors that he has been contacting his sponsors, or his team has been contacting his sponsors to let him know his intentions to go to LIV Golf. The expectation for both of these guys is for the Portland event after they play the US Open.
Yeah, it's not super. I need to stop reading these comments because they're coming in fast. It's not super unexpected. I think I'm a little surprised at how quickly everything has happened. And I think that I think there's a lot of things that I was wrong about. I think it was very easy to sort of do the Fire Fest thing for the last 4 months of like, you don't have anybody. And now they actually have a lot of people. And this is like a real problematic thing for the PGA Tour, especially in the short term. DJ is one thing. Bryson and Reed are like in their prime major champions, right? It's not like Poulter and Westwood, or, even like Martin Keimer, who's almost 40. I'm not surprised that they're going. I'm surprised at how quickly LIV Golf has been able to kind of coalesce some bigger names. And I talked to a tour player last night who expected that guys like Ricky and Varner and I think there was one other would follow. So now I don't know, man. It's moving a lot quicker than I maybe thought it would, which I think poses a legitimate problem to be solved for the PGA Tour.
Right. So rampant speculation that Ricky Harold Varner III potentially going to be next here. And I would still argue, Kyle, that if we rewind 12 months and go watch those First Cut episodes, the list of golfers that LIV Golf has is the list that we identified 12 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 2 things then. One, they got everybody that we thought they would get, which mission accomplished there. But it does also feel like we are one domino away, right? Like if they, I don't want to rampantly throw out names here who probably don't want to be associated with this, but
well, just throw out the names that have been adamant about not going, because I think that you're not. Those people are not on the fence. Like Rory, JT, Spieth, right. They're like, yo, I'm not going. And so I think what you're saying is like, if one of them gets flipped,
it's over.
Then like, I don't like, this is, I guess I sort of theoretically knew this was a problem or an issue for the tour, but now that it's come to fruition, you're like, oh, this is crazy. Like there might not, like, there's a world in which the PGA Tour is not viable in the same way that it is right now, let's say 3 years from now or whatever, right? Is that fair?
Yes. The only thing the tour has are these statements of confidence in the tour, these statements of, hey, I'm staying, I'm not interested in this. I'll tell you what, Kyle, a lot of guys have made those statements and have just jumped ship. So it's not even like that great of a security blanket to have.
Yeah, I think the difference is like, I don't know that Bryson was ever to be trusted. I don't know that like Patrick Reed was ever to be trusted if he ends up going. It would be more surprising if you got a Morikawa, a Hovland, a JT, like guys that you're like, I think I can like at least reasonably trust what those guys have put out there publicly, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. And I will say, and even as I've independently confirmed, like the Bryson talking to his sponsor things, is like Bryson in general is not that reliable, right? Like he's constantly flipping or wherever the wind takes him, or he throws stuff on a wall to see what sticks and see what the response is going to be. And then he'll do something else. So they're even like, here's what we've been told. He's not even that reliable, but you're right. There's some of these guys have a better track record of sticking to what they say.
Well, with Bryson, I know people have reported in the past, like, yo, here's what Bryson's saying.
Yeah.
That like, hear what I'm saying, that I'm not reporting this will happen. I'm reporting this is what Bryson's saying.
Right.
And then something else might happen because he like, that's sort of what you're saying, is that he's constantly being kind of tossed about by the wind and the waves, as it were. So yeah, I think that's a valid point.
So that Portland event, which is in a few weeks, is likely to include, Patrick Reed, Bryson DeChambeau. I think Jason Kokrak is probably in the mix there. We're going to play a major championships before then. So things are certainly going to continue to evolve. But do you think this is kind of a slow and steady trick? I mean, it hasn't really been a trickle, right? It's been like we flipped the faucet on, and everyone has said, okay, if I was willing to do this, I'm just going to go now.
Yeah, I think, let's say after the third event, you'll kind of have your basis for what the first 8 will look like. Now, that might be different than what 2023 looks like or 2024 looks like. But I think that you're going to get to a point where it's very clearly two sides. We're not there right now. But after Portland, or after, what's the third one? Is it Bedminster or Miami?
You know what? I'm not even sure. I can find out.
I think it's Bedminster. At that point, I think you'll kind of have like what each side sort of looks like for the rest of 2022.
Yeah, Bedminster, then Boston, Chicago. There you go. Jacob has it up on YouTube if you're watching there. Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll take a break, then we'll get into all the mess that we need to get through on all this. The corner that Kyle stands in, the PGA Tour, and what they could possibly be doing. So we'll hit all that stuff. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Okay, KP, let's dive into this. Wednesday morning, June 8th. That's when we are live right now talking about this. The corner that you're in looks like what?
By the way, somebody just said if Spieth goes, KP would take down all his pictures behind him and hang a Saudi flag on his wall. That's pretty funny. I wouldn't do that, but that's pretty funny. The corner that I am in is I'm a little bit, I think I underestimated the historical crossroads that this feels like. I was again talking to a tour player last night, and he was like, man, it feels like professional golf changed forever today. And this was on, what was that, Tuesday night. So all the draft and the like kind of the big, like, okay, this is like actually happening day. And that might be hyperbole, but it might not be. Like, I think some of the feedback that I've received from people is like, oh, you're just a shill for the PGA Tour, and you just are like a homer for the tour. And I think it's fair to like disclose, like, CBS Sports has a relationship with the PGA Tour. CBSSports.com does not necessarily have a relationship with the PGA Tour, but I work for an organization that has a financial relationship with the PGA Tour. That being disclosed, I don't think the PGA Tour is like impermeable or should be like protected at all costs. I think my frustration is twofold. One, the way this is all taking place, the way the PGA Tour is being like kind of threatened, if you will, it's a facade. It's not getting better for fans, right? You're just having players that are taking money from a government that is like funding this league, to, I think, sort of launder that country or that government's reputation. And that's like, first of all, it's gross. And second of all, it doesn't make professional golf more compelling to me. I'm compelled when Max Homa wins Riviera, a place where he grew up going to that event with his family, and he breaks down crying because that's so meaningful to him. Like, none of these people, I tweeted this out last night, none of these people that are in these press conferences believe anything they're saying. Right. They don't want to grow the game around the world and be an example to kids or whatever. They just got paid a bunch of money. And so I feel like we're just living in this like really gross, like fake Truman Show like world where we are the mark, like we are the target. Right. That's being like I don't know. We're the people that they're trying to like trick or whatever. I don't even really know how to say that. And that just sucks. Like, it just sucks. And it makes me sad. And I don't think, professional sports is not perfect. The PGA Tour is not perfect. I think some of that a little bit happens in all of pro sports, but it's just very like blatant and clear in this particular scenario. Yes. And I hate that. And I hate that the it's just so far removed from like I think the purity of like the major championship golf, where there's a ton of money, but man, on Sunday afternoon, nobody's thinking about money, right? Like, you're thinking about just playing golf as well as you can on these historic great courses. And this is just like the opposite of that. And I hate that. I think it's extraordinarily sad for a sport that we all love. I know I said we were going to go back and forth, and I just talked for like 5 minutes. So I want to give it back to you and just get your take on that.
No, and it's so the way that I feel is that there are flaws and issues with a lot of things that go on in sport. The fact that billionaire team owners hold cities hostage for taxpayer dollars to build their new stadium is disgusting. I hate
gross.
It.
Yeah.
It's the worst. This is happening all over the place, right? The NCAA is a horrible organization that takes advantage of student athletes, and I'm thrilled to see that they are essentially rendered useless in this new 2022 world. I hate the NCAA. I have been critical of the PGA Tour countless times. We have bounced around the idea of some of the PGL, like, hey, this is great for golf. This is growing the product. The PGA Tour, who would not show you bad shots that were hit in some weird way to protect their players in this organization. It was bizarre. They've gotten better at that, but we've been critical of the PGA Tour when warranted. To me, taking $2 billion, which you're never going to turn a profit on, which I don't really care, whatever. But like, to use that money to buy exposure and normalcy for your human rights abuses is where I happen to draw the line. And the comments can say, the United States government does horrible things. Sure, that's fine. Every government in the world, you've got issues with politicians, you've got issues with governments, all that stuff. If the U.S. Treasury was funding the PGA Tour, I'd have a problem with them spending my tax dollars in that way. That's just me. But Rick, they bailed out Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo sponsors a tour. Sure, there's a lot of complications here. The lineage from the financial arm of the Saudi government paying directly into that's very easy to track. Okay, yes. I'm not confused by that. Yeah. So this is where I happen to draw the line, and I'm all for golf competition, Kyle. Like, I would love more competition in golf, but this is not necessarily that. When you're right, the product's going to get worse for everybody. The PGA Tour product's going to get worse. The LIV Golf product, TBD, probably not going to be all that great. We'll see. This is not good for us, and we're being asked to just take it.
Yeah, like I think. I mean, listen, I tweeted this out on Wednesday morning, but like, if the United States government, like if the U.S. Treasury, like you said, like if they went and bought the PGA Tour, like if tomorrow they paid. They went to Jay Monahan and said, we're going to buy the PGA Tour for $3 billion. You know what column I would be writing? Yo, this is a really, really bad idea. It's not just that the Saudi Arabian government's human rights issues are horrible, which, by the way, the players seem to like I'm astonished at the way they're talking about the league. That, like, Graham McDowell yesterday said something like, if Saudi Arabia wants to improve themselves through sport, then we are proud to be a part of that. And you're like, yo, like, that's like, that ain't it. Like, that's not what you should be proud of. Like, that's not a thing to like take pride in, right? It's not like it's a different regime and like the country got completely torn down and is trying to rebuild itself. These are the same people that have like done all this stuff, right? Like, you're also a mark, like, via their government, and take the human rights stuff out of it. I just think it's a bad idea when governments that are supposed to provide infrastructure and protection for countries or like areas of the world start pulling the purse strings of culture. Like, that just is not going to go well. Like, what do we have historically that says that goes well at any point? You know, it just is like, I don't know. The whole thing just feels really disgusting. And I think people are like, well, give it a chance. And it's like, well, the foundation of it is not for the fan. It's not for us. It's not for golf. It's for themselves. Each side is operating out of incredibly selfish motives, even more so than normal in professional sports. And it's just so clear to see up front that I don't see a path forward where any of that is good for those of us who love the sport.
This is probably a bad comparison, but like, the current American sport, get politics out of my sport, is someone taking a knee during the national anthem. The current golf, keep my politics out of sport, is like, oh yeah, the Saudi government is like funding this entire thing. It's like, well, those are pretty sizable. Those are pretty sizable differences of political involvement in the sports that we love, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that, I don't know if people are just willfully, and maybe you can pull up some of the comments, Jacob. I haven't looked at them in the last few minutes, but I don't know if people are like willfully just ignoring the reality. Like, people are like, oh, but what about the United States government? And you're like, I don't know how to say this more clearly. The United States government is not running a professional sports league. It's not running the PGA Tour. It does not own part of the PGA Tour. The Saudi Arabian government is literally running, in charge of, you can argue that, but like, they control the money for this. So that's who's in charge, is follow the money. And they are literally running this. Like, I don't know why that's so difficult to understand, and why people would ever think that something like that is a good idea. Like, you even take the human rights stuff out of it. Why would it be a good idea for the French government to run a league and all these Americans and South Africans and whoever to go over there and say, hey, we want to do the French government's bidding culturally? Like, what the heck? Like, that is, like, if you think, like, what, like, who is a fan of that? Like, who's like, man, that's what I like love about sports, is when athletes do the government's bidding for them.
Right. No, that's a better way to put it. People get tied up in the political side of this, because politics are now a sporting event. You have to choose a team, and you have to do exactly what that team wants and agree with everything that they do, whether they win or lose. So when you frame it as third party France or whatever other country, it's like, oh, that doesn't make any sense either. Forget all the other stuff. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and that's like, to me, there are two parts of it. It's like, this government is not great, and any government running a sports league is probably not a good idea. And then the other side is like, and not to go like full Nick Saban, but like, is this what we want golf to be? Like, it just feels, I think the PGA Tour already had a little bit of like it can feel a little sterile at times. And that's true of any pro sports. I mean, I'm not like naive to the reality that pro sports is not like when you're 16 and it's like you're not getting paid, and it's like just a very pure thing. We grew up playing baseball, and high school baseball for me was like just like the best time of life. I don't want to go back to it, but it was just like a very innocent, like sweet, fun time. And so you want to like catch glimpses of that in pro sport, right? Where Max Homa winning Riviera is a glimpse of that. He didn't care about the $1.5 million. I mean, he does, but it's very secondary or tertiary to like the purity of that moment. We see that a lot at major championships. There are these glimpses of kind of what we love about sport, which is the innocence and the purity of it. And this is like as far removed from that as possible. Like, it's like the exact opposite of that. So I'm having a hard time figuring out what people find attractive about it, I guess, is kind of the way that I would put it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. Some of these comments are,
pull them up. I want to react to them
here. So I don't know if so pull up the one from David, 757. If you have a gasoline powered vehicle, you personally have funded LIV. So David's here all the time. So we know David's like a real person and can be a part of this conversation. David, thank you very much for that. One, I do not have a gasoline powered car, so I guess I'm good here. But also, that is okay. When that comment comes up,
I ride a bicycle, so we might be clear here.
So a comment like this, I think, is interesting, and this is not a unique comment, where it's basically the idea of globalization. This is a very small world, and all of these countries interact with one another for imports and exports. And because of that, we have to be okay with whatever. The other argument that I always see is, well, do you have an iPhone? Because child labor in China is X, Y, and Z, right? So there's this idea that globalization of government and product somehow then gets tied to support or lack thereof of this sporting league, which to me is, I guess it's a leap. I don't know, like that this is not a unique comment.
Yeah, I think it is. Honestly, I think comments like this are kind of fair, right? I think one thing that's happened with the LIV Golf stuff is that it's made me think more about like, okay, what am I doing that maybe I shouldn't be doing, or maybe I should think more closely about, right? It doesn't like it I think I get frustrated when people are like, well, wait, look over here. And it's like, well, I'm actually looking at the thing that I cover every day that I have to like have an opinion about. But I think from a personal standpoint, I actually think that's a fair question and something that I have thought more about because of this league than maybe I would have before. I also think it's a little bit different when you're talking about organizations that are doing business rather than or maybe I would say a government and an organization that are doing business rather than like individuals that are being essentially purchased by a government. Like those are kind of different things. I'm trying to think of an example like for my own individual self. Like how would like what's happening in LIV Golf apply to me as an individual? And I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I do think there is a little bit of a differentiation there.
Let's cover this one too. 758 here from Andrew. This is also kind of the elephant in the room that we will have to address at some point, or at least maybe we will. Is it weird to you guys that 2 tournaments are at Trump courses? Let's just do it, Kyle. So this is not a golf story because it is also a political story, because it also gets not only coverage from CBSSports.com, but the New York Times and the Washington Post and yada, yada, yada. And whatever side of the political aisle that you're on, they are taking 2 of these events to courses owned and operated by a politician, in this case, the former president of the United States, who like that alone does not reconcile with a lot of people. And I think the fact that they're going to 2 Trump courses alone makes people choose a side on this. Also, don't get fired here.
Again, I don't, to me, that's not a Trump issue. It's if Obama owned 2 courses, it's like, I don't know, man. Like it takes away from the golf to go to courses owned by politicians. That's just not a great idea. Whether it's Trump, whether it's Obama, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's George Bush, like, again, is that making golf better for me as a fan who wants to, again, catch glimpses of like that kind of purity of sport? No, it just feels a little bit contrived. So to me, I don't know that that's necessarily a Trump specific issue as much as it is a, hey, let's try to make golf about, well, I don't want to say that. I don't know that it's a Trump specific issue, but it's going to be I mean, that reality certainly plays a huge role in all this.
Yes, I think it is right. Anytime you attach Trump to whatever, it gets people all hot and bothered in all directions. But you're right. This goes back to me for why are our politics and our sport intermingling? I don't care. I don't want them to go to my local congressman's house for tea and crumpets. Like I just don't want it. Like I don't need it. I don't need politics in my sport. The other thing is, the PGA Tour has said nothing.
That's right. I talked to a player last night who expected something. He said, I think the word he used was like really harsh to come down over the next like day or two. I think it's going to be balls in the air on Thursday and they release something. But the problem, Rick, is and I didn't see this coming. Maybe you did. But they've got a players resigning from the PGA Tour problem.
Yeah, that I will hat tip to whoever figured out resigning from the PGA Tour. Honestly, great move. Like that. It's
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because not only does it protect you from you're sort of mitigating your risk of your future risk where you could, like, if LIV Golf folds in 6 years, like there's a pathway for you to get back to the PGA Tour, right? Like legally, but you're also protecting yourself in the short term by giving yourself a pathway to play in the major championships. And I'm not like a legal mind, but I just did not see that part of this coming. And I think it's real. Like, I don't obviously don't love it, but I think it's brilliant. Like, I think it's really, really smart for them to do. I think the interesting part about that is that Phil is actually not resigning from the tour.
Right.
And he's been the one that's kind of been outspoken about, like, I earned that lifetime membership. I'm going to keep it and we'll see what happens. So and I think he's kind of always been the guy that I thought, oh, he's going to be the, like, lead the charges into court guy. Like, he's going to be the one that the litigation. So
$200 million to get punched in the face by everybody else and then figure out what's going to happen.
Yeah, like, he's the face of the litigation of the PGA Tour and LIV Golf. And so I guess that doesn't totally surprise me, but I think for somebody like Dustin Johnson or Bryce, I don't know if Bryson is resigning. I presume he is, but I think again, man, like, the tour is in a really, like, vulnerable position. I don't know how you could look at it otherwise. I mean, I think that people, I have not talked to anybody at the tour. I think that people that are on the tour and run the tour are legitimately concerned about the future of the PGA Tour in a way that I don't know I would have thought was true 3 months ago or 6 months ago.
There's two more questions that I want to get to because I think they help with the conversation. But the PGA Tour, Kyle, and we've known this, that they don't have a lot of leverage, and they're already kind of losing some of their leverage with the USGA saying, hey, listen, we're like 2 weeks out. We're just going to let this happen for this time around. But what realistically is a punishment that would make these players think twice? I have one answer. The only answer for me is a lifetime ban. It's the only option.
I don't even know if that does it, because if you're resigning, then you're like, well, you can't ban me because I'm resigning. You can't fire me. I quit. Right. Mm-hmm. We talked about that on Tuesday. I think the only thing that makes them think twice is, and I've been trying to get in touch with the OWGR board, because the OWGR, and it's a very normal sport thing that, like, these decimal points are going to decide the future of golf.
They are
for the OWGR points, but, like, that's the whole deal. Is if it becomes extraordinarily difficult for you to get into major championships, then you can, like, LIV Golf can have its league, take Bryson, take DJ or whoever. But it's not going, like, the major championships are still more powerful in the sport of golf than LIV Golf. They're still more compelling, more alluring, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm just, like, the idiot here. Maybe I'm like Taylor Gooch. But I just think it's going to come down to the decimal points of the OWGR, and that's run by, obviously, the PGA Tour and the major championship organizations. And I don't know that there's anything that the Tour is. I don't think they have much control right now. And I think they are. I mean, if I'm the Tour, I'm on the phone with Augusta, USGA, RNA, PGA of America, European Tour, and the International Federation of PGA Tours, which maybe they run. And I'm just begging them not to give OWGR points to the LIV Golf events, right? Like, that's the path forward, I think.
Even if these LIV Golf events do get OWGR points, excuse me, these players are likely to have a divisor problem, Kyle. So for those who don't know how this works, it's a rolling 2-year system of results, of points that you earn. And the minimum divisor is 40, and I think the max is 52. Mm-hmm. So remember when Morikawa was like 25 events into his career, and he was already like the 11th ranked player in the world? And that was actually worse than it could have been, because they were dividing his results over 40 events instead of over 25. If they play 8 events this year, or say 12 events next year, and maybe 16 the year after that, that's only 28 events. They're gonna have a divisor problem, even if they get OWGR points.
I this is again a very normal sport conversation. We have a divide. The divisor problem is going to decide the future of professional golf, but I think you can supplement that with Asian Tour events, and if you're playing in the majors, you can get close enough to 40, depending on how many events the LIV Golf League goes to. You can get close enough to 40 to make it work. But I do think in the short term, you're right. Like that for the Kevin Nas of the world. I don't know that that's a problem for the DJs of the world, but for the Kevin Nas and Taylor Gooches of the world, where you need to like kind of stay in the top 50, like that actually could be a short-term problem.
Two more things, because I think these are ways to round it out here. 8:04 a.m. Jacob Gabriel says, Rick and Kyle, are you okay with the PGA making golf a monopoly? Which I would argue they are nowhere near. We're learning they're nowhere near making that possibility, right?
Pull that up, Jacob.
There you go.
I presume he's talking about the PGA Tour, not the PGA of America.
Correct.
And I don't understand this question because the PGA Tour does not control the four most important events in the world.
So I think it's like this: like if are we so against competition that we'd be happy with the PGA Tour only ever being the only game in town, only ever being a monopoly? That's the way that I read this.
Sorry, say that again. Somebody's calling me.
So basically, the way that I read this question is, I think in Gabriel's eyes, LIV Golf is competition. Competition in general is good. If we are against competition, and that just leaves us with the PGA Tour being a monopoly forever, and they control everything, and they're the only game in town.
So I said this on. I responded to somebody on Twitter last night and said this. I am pro disruption. I'm not. So I guess I'm not okay with the PGA Tour being a monopoly. I don't think they are a monopoly, but I am. I'm in favor. Seth Wall said this. Seth Wall said this really, really well at the PGA Championship last year at Kiowa, where he was talking about like the value of disruption, not only for the actual disruptor, but for the PGA of America, for the tour, for the majors. Like there's a ton of value in disruption. What I'm anti is this sort of soulless fragmentation of professional golf that makes everything worse and nothing better. Like, does any golf fan who follows the tour and follows the majors, does anybody think any of what's happening is legitimately making professional golf better for fans of golf?
I'd argue they don't even know the rules. So no, I don't think.
What do you mean by the rules?
The fact that there's a team aspect, and do you know how the team scoring is done, and whose scores count towards what, and how many holes they're playing, and that this actually starts on Friday and not on Thursday, and like there is no one is excited about LIV because they're like, wow, great golfers playing a great course in a great format. That sentence is said.
And that's the thing. It feels like this week's rollout, like what about this week's rollout has you thinking like, man, this is going to be sweet for like my fandom of professional golf.
Right.
Was it the team names? Was it the
logo that did it for me? Was it
the logos? Was it the fake draft where teams were already formed, but then like you kind of had a draft and Bernd Wiesberger went number 1 overall?
Okay, Kyle, if you had a fantasy football draft and you decided the order and then you said, oh, but this team's already full and that team only has one spot available, you would riot against your commissioner.
And all those guys went to the same college, so they get to be together. Like it's like I just don't know if I was talking about this with some guys in a group chat. I said, I think I'm surprised by some of the people that are supporting LIV Golf. And one of the guys who I will not name said it's simply a reaction to how frustrated like you and I and others that cover this stuff are. Like they're not actually reacting to like how great the golf league's going to be. They're reacting to, oh, this person's mad. I think it'd be kind of cool to like take an anti stance against this person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And So it's just all like posturing. I think. I don't know how you could look at what's going on this week. Is there a world in which a league gets created and there's a draft and it goes to a great course and it's like well run and all that stuff, where I would be far more elated than covering the 3M Open? Hell yeah. Like I'm like, I'm not like, I don't want the PGA Tour to fail. I am a proponent of something like that happening that makes my professional golf coverage and viewing and fan experience better. I'm not against like the idea of this. I'm against the foundation of it and the way that it's playing out, because it's playing out in a way that is just completely farcical. Like it's a farce. Like the whole thing is a complete farce. Before I forget, I want to go back to David's question from earlier where he was talking about driving a vehicle means supporting LIV Golf, because I thought about this as we were talking, and I think there's a big difference between, I don't have a ton of choices in that, right? Like in the way that like culture and not culture, but society works. Like to have a car, to like almost everybody has a car. You have to buy gasoline to run that. Like there's not a ton of choice there. I mean, again, like I ride my bicycle pretty much everywhere in town where I live. So there is some choice, and I try to make wise decisions about that. I think one of the things that's frustrating about the LIV Golf stuff is like those guys did have a choice, and they had a very clear choice. And to me, they didn't. And Justin Thomas talked about this. Like, I just didn't agree with your choice. Doesn't mean I don't like you. Doesn't mean I think you're a bad person. I just think your choice was a bad choice. It was a bad decision. I thought JT, I don't know if you saw that clip, but I thought he was really good on that. And so I think that's one difference I would say between kind of what David was proposing there versus like what's actually taking place here.
Yeah, and that JT clip from I think it was from this morning is floating around Twitter. You should check that out. All right, last one here, and then we'll get out because we'll probably have to do an emergency pod 3 more times today. 8:05 a.m. Jacob Cole says, if PGA, and again, this assumes PGA Tour, proposes some changes or same changes as LIV, will the players come back? And I think the short to that is no, because there's money involved. But Kyle, I think this is a larger conversation about kind of what I expect to happen. And I expect that we are at a very important point in golf organization history, and the PGA Tour is going to have to reform, and potentially reform pretty significantly to thwart potential rivals or more people leaving. I think we are now, for 50, 60 years, there was no competition to the PGA Tour, and now there's a lot with a lot more resources. And that is going to have to force the hand of some type of reformation.
I think the follow up for Cole here is like, what changes are you referring to? Right? Because the players are not leaving the PGA Tour because there's a shotgun start and because there's a draft and there's a team aspect. So I guess my answer would be no, they won't come back, because that's not why they left to begin with. Right. I do think there's a world in which the tour, I think what will be interesting is how they start to funnel more money. They've already started this, and we've talked about this before, but how do they start to funnel more money to their stars and their superstars, the guys that really matter? They've done it through the PIP. They've done it in a variety of ways, but they need to kind of empty the chamber on that, right? Like you have to go as far. Like, I don't think they've gone as far as they can. I think they sort of like hedged a little bit of like, well, maybe if we implement the PIP and the Comcast top 14 or whatever the hell that thing is, then like maybe we'll like fend off some rivals or whatever. And you didn't. So like, how far can you go with that? Like, how can you max that out? Like legally, functionally, logistically, financially, how do you max out how much you're paying your stars? I think that to me is the change that the tour could, maybe should make that will not bring players back, but like sort of shore up the future of how all this plays out?
Okay, last one, because I think we have to answer these, because 8:16 a.m. Fuji Jacob says, KP and Rick, if the PGA collapses and LIV becomes the mainstream, would you walk away from the game or begrudgingly migrate over, considering your personal values and livelihoods? I think we have to reckon with this. So
it's a phenomenal question, and I'm glad he asked it.
And fair. Personally, I don't know the answer to this question. I would imagine if tomorrow the PGA Tour stopped existing and LIV Golf was the thing and all the best players in the world were there and there were fantasy contests and sports books offered odds on it, I would be lying if I said I would not cover it. And I would not, like, I'm part of the problem, right? Like, I'm part of this wheel that spins, that I need something for my own livelihood, right? So I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't cover it.
Yep. Go ahead.
And I also do think that, like, there is a big difference of, and we saw this yesterday with some of the press conferences, Kyle, where it was like, well, if you're so against this, journalists shouldn't be covering it. And I don't think journalists have to cover things or should only cover things they 100% agree with. And I don't think that you have to. There are a lot of people who hate their job, right? In all aspects of life, but they do it because they have to. And that's how society works. And I wouldn't say I'd hate my job, but like, I don't have to agree with everything that's going on. I don't agree with everything the PGA Tour does, but these is for completely different reasons. So yes, I would probably begrudgingly do it.
Thank you for asking this question, Fuji. So I do think there's a little bit of and people have pushed back on this on Twitter of like, yo, why are you giving this oxygen? It's a fair question. And I've actually got a call with some people at, like, my bosses at CBS Sports next week to talk about, like, how are we going to cover this? Like, what's our position on this? What's our stance on this? So let's pretend like I'm independent and I'm not working for an organization. Like, just personally, I just run KylePorterGolf.com or whatever. I think the move that I would make, and Jeff Shackelford's done this a little bit, is to primarily cover the major championships, both on the men's and women's side, because those are the things that I love the most, and tangentially cover LIV Golf. So would I dive full bore into it the way that we do with the PGA Tour? I probably would not. Would I be lying if I said I would ignore it completely? Yeah, I'd be lying. Like, I would tangentially cover some of that stuff, but I would shift more of my focus to what I think are the events in the world that matter the most. And there's an opportunity, and there, honestly, Rick, there's going to be a real opportunity for stuff like the USAM and the Curtis Cup and all these other golf things that we don't give as much attention and coverage to, for those things to kind of, I think, thrive and maybe come to the forefront a little bit more than they have. And so to fully answer the question, yeah, I would tangentially cover it, but not give my full attention to it the way that I do with the PGA Tour.
Fair. It's fair. We forget that golf is not the PGA Tour, and golf is a worldwide game, right? Like, we get crap for that all the time when we say somebody has 5 wins and they're like, he won 12 times on the European Tour or whatever, right? It's a worldwide game. There's a lot more stuff going on.
I do love it when people are like, "Oh, you Americans are just, you don't even know that golf exists." I'm like, I like more of the guys on the Euro Ryder Cup team than I do on the, like, I'm not who you think that I am. Right. Like, and like, one comment does not a career make, does not a full breadth of coverage make. So I just, and people just see one comment and react to it, but that can be frustrating at times.
Okay. We're going to stop there. There's obviously going to be a lot more conversation about this in the days and weeks and months. So get used to the hot takes from the Yanks over here as we try to figure all this. All right, KP, buddy.
Good.
Always good to chat with you. I'm sure we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. It was good stuff. Thanks, Rick.
Producer Jacob, all the hard work behind the scenes. Kyle Porter available at Kyle Porter CBS. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.